On October the 31st, 1517, Martin Luther posted 95 big questions which he believed faced the church of his day to a local church door in Wittenberg, Germany. 500 years later, I decided to post 95 new questions, one a week, to the web, questions which I believe the church must face in the 21st century. Love God, love your neighbour, love yourself. That's it. Working through Jesus' famous summary of his teaching, we've explored something of what he taught about loving yourself. And next week we'll begin to dig into what he had to say about loving God. But first, here's just one last but even more fundamental question to grapple with around his radical take on what we've spent the last few weeks probing: loving your neighbour. Over those last few weeks, we've explored how Jesus made it clear that we're always imprisoned by our exclusion of those who are different to us. We are never, ever released by it. That it's only as we build bridges with those who don't see life our way that we begin to confront and to deal with our ugly prejudices, our unconscious bias, and our hidden fears. That a neighbour is really only an enemy whose story we don't yet know. That through our inclusion of those who see life differently to us, our story grows richer and deeper than it would have otherwise been. That whatever the impact on those we reach out to in love, we are stretched, we're renewed, and we're made more whole by our relationship with them. That God hides in the others who are all around us, and that as we serve them, we serve him. And we've recognised again that 20 centuries after Jesus' revolutionary words first challenged the neat and comforting tribal formulas of his contemporaries, our 21st century society and the church within it still struggles with exactly the same issues of prejudice and religious exclusion. But here's that last question, and it comes wrapped up in the form of another story, one that Matthew tells us about Jesus in chapter 8 of his Gospel. He says that once, when Jesus had entered the town called Capernaum, a Roman Centurion approached him and asked him for help. "Lord," he said, "my servant lies at home paralysed in terrible suffering." In response, Jesus agreed to go and to heal him. But the centurion replied, "Lord, I don't deserve to have you come under my roof, so just say the word and my servant will be healed." Matthew tells us that when Jesus heard this, he was astonished, and he said to those following him, "I tell you the truth, I have not found anyone in all Israel with such great faith. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west, and they'll take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. However," Jesus concluded, "the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown aside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." So much for Jewish exclusivity. Jesus dares to teach that some Gentiles, people of non-Jewish origin, will be part of the big feast of the kingdom of heaven. Now, this alone was enough to brand him dangerously heretical, but he continues. There are others who think they belong, who think they're in, whose religious credentials are impeccable, but will find themselves thrown out. The Roman Centurion in Matthew's story was not only a Gentile, which put him firmly into the unacceptable category as far as the religious and social leaders of Jesus' time were concerned, but he was also a member of the wrong religion. He worshipped the wrong God. In fact, because of what we know about Roman culture, he most probably worshipped several of the wrong gods. Yet Jesus still announces that the centurion's faith was greater than any he'd observed in Israel. So here's that big question. Does God accept people on the basis of their religion and of being committed to the right one? Or does God meet people for who they are as people? Put differently, does God love religions or does he love people? In other words, is God interested in people as people rather than as representatives of Hinduism or Islam or Judaism or Buddhism or even atheism? I believe that our task is to meet and include people as people rather than to see them or even confront them as members of competing religions. And I believe that it's only this that provides us with a starting point that will help us as individuals and churches to approach our pluralist and multi-faith communities and society from a Jesus-centered perspective. So to close with, what do you think? Here's that question again. Does God accept people on the basis of their religion and of being committed to the right one? Or does God meet people for who they are as people? And as you think about that, think about the implications, if any, for the way you answer that in your local churches, in our multi-faith and our globalized world.